All right, we're on. Everybody, welcome to the Win Together podcast, where we win and we find ways to navigate the experience that we're going through right now. And to do that, I've got Jared, the clinician Casey here. Hey, Jared, how you doing?
Doing really, really well.
Super glad to hear that. And Shay, the super coach, Aslet. I think it's important to, let's just jump on that right away, Jared. And feeling good right now is such a valuable emotion and space to be in. Talk to me a little about how have you created this place where you feel good today, or what do you feel good about? What's going on there?
Well, I think just put it in context for whoever's listening or whenever you're listening to this. Right now, the climate around us is a lot of fear. Coronavirus is taking mad control. Lots of things are shut down.
It's the beginning of April 2020, so that's kind of where we're at.
Hearing in the news, going to probably pause it for another month, 2 months, 9 months. A lot of that kind of speculation is coming up. And, initially, change is really hard. When we have something that hits us like this, or our instinct is to resist change and to want to get back to a place of homeostasis or just basically comfortable. I want to be comfortable. And for me in my life, I'm human just like everybody else. I have felt the shake and the terror and the frustration and the fear, and it's encouraged me to adapt and my family to adapt and to really kind of lean more on our hope and faith. And that's been a really sustainable thing for me, is putting my hope and faith up front. One major shift my family did is we pray together and we study scriptures, and we do that now in the morning, where we were doing that at night before. And it's still a mess. 5 kids flopping around and struggling to pay attention and all those different facets.
5 kids from teenager to toddler, right?
Exactly. But it's been going on for a couple weeks now where we've been practicing this, and I feel more energized. I feel like we're putting God first in our life, and in a way He puts us back first in His when we do that. And it's just directed me through what would normally be chaos and fear to optimism and hope and feeling really reassured.
Winning together is about finding ways to connect with yourself and your partners in adapting to what actually is. I know that in my life, when I found myself really resistant to what the reality is, what is happening, and wanting to be something else, my actions don't match up with what's going on, and I feel disconnect and discord and struggle, and like I'm doing it the hard way. And I really like what you're saying there, to adapt and take the opportunity to create your family experience in a different way, or a more meaningful way, or a more connected way, because of the opportunity that presents itself. You've got your kids home instead of school, so to do that instead of becoming really resistant or resentful or poor me, or things are happening to me, it's a big difference in perception or perspective and attitude.
Yeah, and there's been some unexpected side effects that are actually positive. My 2 boys, I've got a 10-year-old and a 7-year-old basically, and they usually are oil and water. They fight all the time. They don't really like each other that much. At least that's what it seems. It's brotherly stuff. But now that they don't have any friends, neither of them can go play at friends' houses, and neither of them have those outside options. They're playing together. They're communicating. They're being nice. They're sharing. It's been this piece their entire lives where they just don't get along, but now they're kind of forced to be together so much. But they're actually doing really, really well. So seeing some of those optimistic things that maybe that wouldn't have ever happened, or would have taken many more years, many more experiences. It's been really fun and encouraging to see those little things as well.
I have also found with our family is part of being around each other way more than you're used to is addressing small irritations or getting stuck or resist, times where there's friction, and addressing those quickly and cleaning it up, and creating new ways to be together so you're winning and having a good experience is one of the ways that we've been keeping the ball rolling in a good direction for our family too.
And along these lines, there's a question we often ask our clients in general, and we have this base question we'll use to kind of see where they're at with accepting life, accepting if things are happening to them, if they're happening to those other things. It's rooted in acceptance. And this question is, okay, it's not really a question, it's more of a statement. The world is exactly as it should be. And then we pause and we ponder and we think about it. And you can kind of see people's bodily reactions, the way that they respond quickly or don't respond. Some people really think about it to kind of get a gauge, call it a litmus test of where this person is at in their ability to accept change or reject change. And this time right now in the world is a big statement. The world is exactly as it should be right now. And if you're listening, you're probably like, man, no way. Or, yeah, I can see that. Just depends on where you're at. But that statement allows us to really recognize where we're willing to adapt and change, or where we're resistant and we're focusing on fear, frustration, blame. Trump didn't do this, or Trump did do this, or so-and-so didn't do this. It makes it kind of come back to you. And Shay, when I asked that, what hits you? Is the world exactly as it should be right now?
Absolutely. Perfectly, exactly in the right moment at the right time, always. And, before I met you, I remember specifically going through that exact process. Is it how it's supposed to be exactly? And do you take responsibility and acceptance of that? And that was a big shift for me that has allowed me to put the power of my life in my hands and in my court on my side of the street, so that I can act from a place of power instead of a place and power and possibility instead of a place of my progress is dependent on somebody else, or it's limited by what I can see or what is, because it's not at all. And as you're talking about that is a big deal in because what happens there too, and that is then the behaviors and the actions you take today are directly tied into that belief. So if you believe it is how it's supposed to be, and your opportunity is to connect with your family in a more spiritual way, your actions and behaviors reflect that. If it's not, then you've got time to watch Netflix and watch movies and eat takeout until the world is back how it was supposed to be. It's never going back, and what is part of your opportunity to decide who you want to be based on what you do.
Yeah, and that I love that you just said that it's never going back. I think there's this delusion where, and I'll give you a little analogy. Like, it's kind of a gross analogy, but it gets the
that
point.
Can be effective.
When a chicken gets its head cut off, sometimes it runs around spraying blood, not knowing it's dead yet. And then it falls over and it's dead. Our world, the way we knew it a month ago, it's dead. That's not happening again. People may not know it yet. They're still running around doing the same old stuff, acting like it's the same, but it will never be the same. It is different. This is your opportunity to create a better, different for you and your family, or to get present with what's really important in your life, what really matters, especially if this could end your life.
I think that's been coming for me too, is not to think that I'm an exception to that by the end of the year, maybe I won't have my parents. Maybe I won't be a parent. Maybe one of my kids will be gone. And not in a foreboding way, but that's the reality. It is happening to people around us, and it's not discriminatory, and it could happen. It doesn't matter if you think you're healthy or if you don't, it doesn't matter. And so to really get present to that and live the life that brings you joy, even figuring out what that even looks like or feels like, is how I would want to spend my time. If I, it's all we have is today. That's it. And our lives can radically change quickly. And it's not the fear of that change. I think it's becoming willing to move along with that and adapt is one of those characteristics of happy and successful people, business owners, partners, spouses, parents, etc.
And I think along those lines is if you're willing to adapt and move and accept, this could be a wonderful opportunity to buy you a little extra time or to spend your last days fulfilled or more fulfilling. I think there's been a big wake-up call, a big shake in the whole world that everybody is affected. I think there's this bubble we've lived in where, well, the people over there in Africa, they have poverty. The people in South America, they have third world problems.
China's problems are their problems. They don't affect us.
China's factories shutting down. Their economy is going to fall apart. It's all them. It's not us versus them anymore. It's all of us. Every one of us. And I still see some of that. I still hear some of that. Well, the United States economy is deep. It's got lots of money. Its businesses are strong. But what about the people south of the border? What about the people over there? Are they not connected to us now more than ever? Are we not all somewhat responsible and we can't see that yet? So if you have been blessed with money and health and time or whatever those things are, be generous, be giving, be willing to share. This may be your last opportunity to do those things before you quite literally die, or everything's taken from you and you're made just as low, just as weak, just as vulnerable as those people over there, wherever that may be.
And on the flip side, the relationships that you may form now, maybe the ones that are with you for the next 20 years, or the businesses that you grow or decide to make, the shifts. And I don't know, Jared, from February to now, I've just felt possibility and opportunity, and this is great, and it's good, and it's got great opportunities for those that are willing to look and those that are willing to prepare today to be ready for them. The wisdom of the world will put you in the right place at the right time. It will. It just does.
Yeah, and I think that's the right channel, the right perspective to be on. Now, we recognize that some of you have already been affected. Some of you have lost loved ones. Some of you are going to lose loved ones. We're in that same boat. So when we're saying this is great or this is good, I can see how that might come off as, you guys don't know what you're talking about, or screw you guys. I don't feel like I'm ready for that yet. I'm still grieving the life I lost or the loved one I'm losing. And I can see that and I can respect that. And I think we both can recognize that that's okay. That's where you're at. What we're speaking to is making the most of what you have right now, so you don't waste any more precious minutes. So if you still have someone to love, you love them a little harder. If you still have your life and your health, you treat it with a little more love and respect. If you still have an opportunity to grow, you do it now. I think of like the tale of the virgins, the coming to the bridegroom in the Bible. And it's the 11th hour, and there's people who are rushing to get there, but they're running out of oil, and they're not going to make it in time. There's still a little time to put oil in your lamp. There's still a little time to show up for your higher power, your God, your loved ones, yourself. No matter who you are, where you are, there's still a little time if you can hear this. Do it now. Otherwise, when will you do it? If you won't do it now, what would it actually take to you to do it?
If you don't do it now, when? And if you don't do it, who will? That goes back to your question about, is the world as it is? If it's not, then who are you to your life, and what is it gonna take? When is it gonna happen? And I think also what you're pointing out is, if your fear is just raging right now, our intent here is to put in the possibility of faith and progress and opportunity as also an option to fear and limitation and hurt and loss as the only options if you're focusing on that. What you focus on expands. It's just the law of the universe, and we're not choosing or acting to ignore that. We are just choosing and let you know it feels awesome to work from a place of possibility and faith instead of fear and limitation.
And to quote one of my clients who quoted his grandmother last week, fear is always an option. It's always going to be there. Why not do something else?
I love it. And one of the things that I've come across lately that I really like. It's by, I think, Brett Ledbetter. And he says, winning is not a result, it's a process driven by character. And this is a time when, character is you have the opportunity to develop it in big ways. Like you said, there's still time to fill the lamp. And you've talked about this before, and in motivational interviewing, they talk about co-creation, that it's us creating something to move forward that creates the ownership in somebody else, not you need to or you should. How does co-creation show up in recovery, and how can that become something that you light within?
So the way that I recognize co-creation is identifying where somebody's at in their willingness to change. So that's kind of one of the roots of motivational interviewing is I'm going to ask you really good questions to identify where your pain is and if you're willing to change that pain. And generally when someone starts to really talk about their pain and their real pain, they're going to either shy away from it or they're going to lean into it and start to really ask, how can you help me with this? And if they're leaning into that, we have co-creation. We have an opportunity right now to have a human experience, a shared experience, where we can now map out some hope. We can now create a map of success. Do this together. I will work just as hard as you. I'll run with you. But you still got to take your steps. I'll step right next to you. I'll finish that marathon with you. I'll jump in, but I'm not going to do it all for you. So that co-creation really starts to build upon pain, and then understanding that pain, it turns into purpose.
I think that's so transformative. And co-creation, it gets you to the place of vulnerability and joy, which Brene Brown says is the most vulnerable emotion you can experience. But here's the facts. Good things come to those who ask. There are more people now around you in your world, in your circle, who are willing to co-create with you than ever before, de fuerza, because of the experience that we're going through. We are now having a shared human experience, which is one of the most powerful ways to experience joy. And joy happens when you are willing to accept or acknowledge where you're at, what you want to go to, and letting people see you and ask for help or interest or just run with me. Or even if you're not asking for it, just letting you know, like, I'm really struggling. Here's my plan, or here's how I'm going to work through it. Will you just check in with me tomorrow and let me know, see if I did what I said I was going to do? And all of a sudden now you're allowing yourself to feel joy. And when you're sitting in that, it's not dependent upon the pandemic going away or that your life's any more likely to live the next day or that the pain is gone. But now it's serving a purpose. And now you're moving to a place where there's possibility and energy expands in you and around you instead of contracts.
I heard a client talk about how right now she's feeling the most lonely she's ever felt. She's feeling the most isolated she's ever felt. And she said the social distancing of staying 6 feet apart or 10 feet apart or whatever it is, it's not meant to be socially distant. It's meant physically, yes, but emotionally we should still be close. We should still be contacting. We should still be talking. We should still be connecting. And her relation was, people are taking it too literal. They're living scared. They're hiding. They're pulling back. They're not connecting. They're not present. And right now in her life, that's what she needs the most. We all need that. We all need to be willing to be there for each other, to co-create. And if we can't do it physically, we have to be willing to do it emotionally in whatever way we can.
And it's your inner wisdom that helps you understand that I bet that client also has gifts and talents to connect. And so when they're feeling, hey, this is really not working out for me, that's a way that you can start recognizing, oh, instead of me focusing on getting, if I focus on giving, that'll help me get through with this place where I'm stuck or feeling trapped or, you're not giving your gifts and talents. And I've learned in life that that's your heart. That's how you figure out what your next heart is. And then in small ways is, this is really hurting me. Great. How can you give to somebody else? How can you now turn that into a purpose that gets you through the struggle instead of sitting in the struggle without any reward for what you're doing?
And that reminds me of something I heard from Bob Proctor. He shared in one of his talks that there's these universal laws. That if we live by these universal laws, they will attract good things in our lives.
Yep.
And one of those universal laws and principles is that what you need most of, you should be giving that. And when you give that, it attracts back a multiplier. So you get back more than you gave. You may not see it the way you think it needs to be. You may not recognize it immediately. But when you give that which you need, even though you feel like you're empty and have nothing in the tank, a little bit more shows up than you gave.
So I know we're about 20 minutes, but I gotta share this with you, okay? So here's just a hypothesis I had around that. So when somebody says I'm gonna give 120%, and that's not possible. You can only give up to 100%, and we've learned from some of the work like David Goggins and whatnot that when you think you're giving 100%, it's actually closer to 40 or 50. And so as you're trying to really give and max and grow, and I've wondered if that multiplier effect you talk about is what makes that extra 20%. That when you're giving everything you give, the way the universe works is it gives you something a little bit more back. You get what you're after anyway, and then something more. And that's what kind of makes that 120% is that intangible, unmeasurable, unknowable, yet guaranteed to be there magic of how were you able to do that? Like, oh my gosh, how did you look back at the last month in your business and there's been some magic. You're like, oh, how did I do that? How did that happen? And some of it you can see and some of it you can't, but trusting that will happen and acting and knowing it will, that's what commands magic in your life. And the 120% become more of a practice instead of more of a oddity or something for somebody else, but you'll be able to attract that extra little something there that the universe gives you back when you're giving everything you can.
I love that you see that as a practice, a state of living. It's not this one-off oddity, which does happen from time to time. You get a miracle here and there, and whoa, wow, where'd that come from? But it's more of that actual living that way. Putting in 120%, you're going to get back more than you put in.
Mm-hmm. And letting go of what it's supposed to look like or what you want it to be, just trusting that it will be, I can promise you it will happen. It comes, it's inevitable, it cannot keep itself from you when you put yourself in miracle territory. The challenge for you is how do you put yourself in miracle territory and understanding that the uncomfortableness that comes with that, it's always going to be there. It doesn't go away. But when you step into it, the universe, God, miracles, they manifest. They come. They have to.
Well, and that's where growth comes. Growth comes in the uncomfortable. Jillian Michaels, yoga instructor, Biggest Loser, she that's one of her secret sauce pieces is you got to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And she's an expert at that, at putting people in that position. If we put ourselves in that position, get comfortable with being uncomfortable, we're going to grow. There's no other option. You have to grow.
And when you're in a place of giving in that, you don't focus on how uncomfortable it is. You focus on, my gifts and talents are getting given, and it's just bigger than you. And so when you're in it, it doesn't feel like it's such an interference. It feels like it's part of the process, and you are more accepting and acknowledging of it. That's just part of the process.
Well, Shay, I want to embarrass you a little bit because
sure.
This is an extra special superpower that I've seen in you. Is that I've seen you give as hard as you can give with zero expectation to receive anything back, which in my opinion is one of the hardest aspects of giving, is being willing to do it without being seen. And when you are seen, you're very grateful. You're very acknowledging. You don't go over the top with it, but you're willing to say, oh, thank you for seeing me. But I really appreciate that about you. I've noticed you. I see you. You're the kind of person who just gives. And if they don't give back, you're still fulfilled from what I've seen. And I want to thank you for that.
You're so welcome. I've just learned that if I can stay committed to showing up the way I say they're going to show up, they will take care of themselves in big ways. And part of that's because I expect them to be big. I expect them to be significant. And if I expect them to be small, they'd be small. I really believe that part of how that works is, working together. What I've learned is you give me opportunities to grow in ways that are magical and have been miraculous for me. And then for me to give in the way that I can and to see it match up, that we find something so mutually beneficial, has been just awesome. And part of, I think, the magic is you and I both, we come in and we expect it to be big. We plan on it, we expect it, we ask for it. Go big, guys. I mean, ask for big things. I went from, I was going to get a divorce to 9 months later being in Hawaii with my family for 2 weeks and having an awesome vacation. And going through that experience and something that was totally impossible becoming possible, and just bringing it and bringing it and bringing it. I don't know, it's changed how I see and who I am and what I think and believe, that I win and you win and we win together and we're gonna win and it's gonna happen. That just is. It just is.
So one last question for you. How do you maintain that attitude of I don't need to receive when I give? How do you do that? Like, help us as listeners, help me understand, how can I do this without having to be seen or needing to be seen?
So first of all, I got a great team. So, and what I mean by team is my wife and I work really hard together and we put ourselves in a place where I can do that and there's not a necessary, kind of financial return that has to happen right then to make things keep going. So, one of the things that's coming up for me to answer your question is we bought a house that we can easily afford. It's small, it's old, yep, but we can easily afford it, and it's allowed us to do lots of flexibility in other things, areas of our life, right? I'm wise with my resources, and I've started externalizing my accountability in almost every part of my life. So in almost every part of my life, someone is holding me accountable, and that process of getting to that point has committed me to showing up when I don't want to, and let people see me when I'm really not at my best. But being there and loving me and expecting me to be better and better, that's been a big thing. I heard that in a TED Talk like a year and a half ago, externalize your accountability, and that felt like so impossible. And over time, like you've been part of that, in my fitness, with my spouse, with my kids, like I've almost externalized my accountability in most of the major areas of my life.
That's so awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah. How about you?
I don't know if I have the right answer. I'm just kind of absorbing what you're saying, and I'm seeking to just do it step by step. I think for me is I reflect back to who do I trust with all my actions, and when I feel like when I get praise or someone sees me or acknowledges me, I used to kind of brush that off and try to like not see it, and that was a little bit easier, and it felt like it was a little softer and not getting my ego involved. I think I've adjusted more to not taking myself too seriously and putting credit where credit is due. So whenever I feel praise or I feel acknowledgement, I accept that, but I also, whether I vocalize it or I internally say this to myself, thank you, God. I appreciate you and trusting me with these people I'm helping.
Yeah.
And in a way, I feel like that's how I've had to frame the way I see things, the way I do things. The company that we use here, that we are so gratefully blessed with, is I Am Recovery, and I Am is another name for God. So I don't tell people that very often. I don't share that very often. It's one of those things that I just want Him to be recognized.
The great I Am.
The great I Am. So He's the first decision maker of what we do at I Am Recovery. If there's ever a conflict or a worry or a concern, I think of Him. Or if there's ever a moment of gratitude that someone shares, I share it back up. And I try to remember where all this came from and where all of it can go. And recognize that without God, I have nothing. With God, I have everything. So, and I'm not trying to be overly preachy or whatever that might look like to some people. And it's just the reality that I'm trying to live by is put God first in my life, and He'll put me first in His.
But it's the something bigger than you is what keeps us on track. When you think that you're bigger than the thing, then your ego just gets in the way. But when you keep on putting the thing that's bigger, or the person, or the objective, and you're submissive to it, it allows you to keep growing into it instead of feeling like you have arrived, and not in a way that you're not feeling fulfilled or acknowledged. Like you said, I think letting the acknowledgement in is super critical. That's been a big thing for me, is letting that in and letting it hold, like not letting it drip out the other side. And there was a movie a while back called Two for the Money, and in there, this guy, he's a sports bettor, and he's giving advice, and they have this best week ever. and then his guru comes in or his mentor comes in and says, okay, it's time to full court press. So that's one of the ways that I trigger it, is when things going really good and I just say, okay, time to full court press, as a way to remind myself that when these are going good, okay, it's time to go. It's time to go, not to like take your foot off the brake.
That's an awesome analogy.
Yeah.
The only thing I'd say is on my personal side of my life, when it comes to like, you know, managing my family and, you know, paying bills and managing things, the things I wanted when I was in my 20s are so different now that I'm in my late 30s. I just don't care about nice cars and big houses and boats and things that I thought were going to make my life better when I was younger. And for whatever reason, I haven't ever really attracted those things anyway. And I don't feel like I'm missing out at all. It doesn't matter. But what has been very fulfilling is being part of people's lives, seeing them change, helping witness that change, being home with my kids more, being present for my wife through sickness and health, literally. Those things have been so much more valuable. They've built equity in my life that's irreplaceable.
And the type of person you become, like if you were to lose it all today, what character you develop, you'll win. You will figure it out. Like it will happen again because you know how to do it, and you know, and you're figuring it out, and you've got that talent. Like I will figure it out. My family's more important. My wife's more important. The key people, like it's more important. I love that about you.
Thank you, Shay.
Rock and roll. We win together, everybody. Have a great, great day or week where you're at. And if we can be of support and help, what's the number to call?
801-407-99. There's 3 9s. 8. So 801-407-9998. Nobody memorizes numbers anymore.
I love it.
But that's the right one.
Okay, guys. Thanks for sponsoring Iron Recovery, and we'll see you guys next time. Cheers.